Hey guys, this is a market update. There's one key thing that we need to know that is going to affect the price of Bitcoin and every other crypto in Q1 2022, but really the first half of this year. And we need to know what's going to happen because what happens with inflation is going to affect everything else. I'm going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to have a market update with the price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some other things that I'm looking at. I think all of these factors are going to affect the price of the crypto markets in the first half of 2022. I'm actually still very bullish, but there's things to watch out for. So let's get into it. Firstly, before we get into the video, I have a cryptocurrency giveaway in January. So go ahead and enter that if you want. I'm giving away $10,000 of crypto. Just come and follow me on Twitter. This giveaway is actually sponsored by Pionex. They're a crypto trading bot platform. I use them. You can see I've got some bots running at the moment. I'll leave the link in the description. Just go ahead and enter that. You could win up to 10,000 bucks. But I want to get into the Bitcoin chart. Now, everyone says cryptocurrency is extremely volatile, and I do agree with them. The last few months have been boring, right? We've been in this huge consolidation phase, and we are still in this. We're actually at the bottom of this range right now, and I have to actually redraw this area of value just to make it longer because we've just been ranging for so long. And the thing is that really the market is anticipating what's going to happen with rates, right? So obviously at the moment, the Fed has come out and said, we need to raise interest rates. We need to stop the buying because inflation is so high. Inflation figures are the absolute key to watch out for with the price of Bitcoin. So I want to touch on that later. But for now, in terms of technical analysis, we're just still in this range. It just seems like every time there is a bid trying to raise the price of Bitcoin, it gets hit and sellers come in and just force it down. Volumes are low and the volatility is low, and it just seems like we're ranging here. It seems like we're waiting for some actual economic figures to be coming out late in the later weeks. So that's where we are for now. Also looking at Ethereum, Ethereum looks really quite strong, and there's some reasons for this. So you saw this dip out of this area of value, right? So we had this consolidation phase once more. We actually dipped underneath, right? So sellers came in and said, right, let's try and test this. And it looks like buyers have come back in and pushed the price up. Why is that? I think it's because of NFT volumes. So going over to June Analytics, we can see NFT trading volumes on OpenSea. You know, we definitely had a lull, right? Towards the end of last year, October, definitely trading volumes came off. But look at what's happening now. We're just seeing NFT trading volumes tick up once again on OpenSea. We have another one right here. You can definitely see that NFT trading volumes are ticking up. And obviously to trade NFTs, you need Ethereum. And that is where I think the demand is coming from to basically keep Ethereum in this kind of consolidation phase or not going down as much as it may otherwise. So some fundamental usage is keeping the price high. And that's a theme that I'm looking at in the future where I want to invest is basically in chains that have fundamental usage, right? So actual people, actual economies built on top, and definite demand for a token for a use case. And that will obviously be very beneficial for that token in the future. So that's what I'm looking at going into 2022 and beyond is really actual use cases and where the actual people are using these tokens. That's really where I want to be. The thing that will affect the price most in Q1 2022 is inflation, and not inflation itself, but actually how the Fed deals with inflation and how the rate of inflation is changing. So as we know, most people say that Bitcoin is an inflation hedge, right? So an inflation hedge is supposed to go up in value when inflation rises. And that is true and also not true. It depends on the time scale. And it also depends on how the Fed actually reacts to inflation. So over the long term, an asset that goes up in price is obviously an inflation hedge because inflation is pretty much constant at some level. And so anything that goes up, ahead of inflation would be considered an inflation hedge. And equities can be an inflation hedge, but obviously this type of asset really is kind of more towards gold or, Bitcoin, which is kind of a digital gold in some senses. An inflation hedge, put your money in there when inflation is high as a trade to kind of, secure some sort of upward movement in the price against inflation. Now, that's kind of true and kind of not for Bitcoin. So we can actually just look, it isn't inflation itself that changes the price of Bitcoin. It is the US Federal Reserve's reaction to inflation and how it changes interest rates and monetary policy that actually affects the price of Bitcoin. And I'll show you this on the chart. So obviously towards, in 2020, when we had everything going on, the Fed cut rates to zero, to literally zero, right? Instantly, they just said, right, we're going to cut rates to zero and we're going to buy $700 billion worth of assets, right? Which is mostly their own bonds. Let's go over to the chart of Bitcoin and see when this happened, right? So we can go down and what we want to do is find the time, which was March 15th, 2020. So we'll come in here. March, which is right here. It's this point here, right? So you had this big sell-off in the market, right? When when everything was happening, Fed stepped in and said, right, we're just going to print money and we're going to give everyone money, and we're also going to put interest rates to zero. Literally, you can see on the same day, 15th of March, 2020, the price of Bitcoin started rising, and it just rose and rose and rose, and has been rising ever since. So what that tells me is that the price of Bitcoin is related quite closely to the Fed printing billions of dollars, basically, increasing the money supply, and huge lack of purchasing power for the dollar, right? So debasement of currency. But inflation is very high now. Inflation, we know, is 6%, CPI, much higher than that, really. That's the official figures. So why isn't Bitcoin at all-time highs? Inflation is high, right? So Bitcoin should be at all-time highs, but it isn't. It actually started coming off around November time. So another article, and we can see the Fed again is expected to take a very big step towards a rate hike, raising interest rates and reducing the amount of assets that it borrows, essentially tightening its policy, making money more expensive. Now, this was in December, but actually they started signaling this from November when they started admitting that inflation wasn't transitory. Inflation has become a massive problem. It is a big problem for the Fed, and so they need to come out, hit it hard, become hawkish and say, we're not printing as much money. We're raising interest rates. We want the economy to slow down. We want inflation to slow down. That was around November time. And you can see the price of Bitcoin reacted perfectly to it there, with rising interest rates, money becoming more expensive, and the Fed saying, hold your horses, Bitcoin has come off. So for me, Bitcoin doesn't rise with inflation. It rises with essentially the price of dollars and how strong or weak dollars are, and how much they can buy you. So obviously relating this forward, what the Fed does now in the first half of 2022 and what inflation does is going to be the key thing that affects the price of Bitcoin, and therefore, all the other altcoins that are obviously going to trade off this. If inflation does subside a little bit, the Fed can ease off and say, hey, you know what? We don't have to raise interest rates as quickly or as much, and we can be a little bit looser with monetary policy. I think the price of Bitcoin will just have a bigger bid underneath it. Prices should kind of melt up. If inflation continues to be really high and a big problem for the Fed, I think the Fed still has to remain very hawkish, reduce asset purchases, raise interest rates, and just be a very hawkish Fed. That doesn't seem like it's going to be a very good thing for the price of Bitcoin in general. So that's what I'm looking at really this year. I obviously don't know what's going to happen with all of this. We have to wait for the numbers. But if you're looking for generally what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin and therefore cryptos, it really is the inflation figures and then how the Fed reacts to those. Apart from this, there are really four things that I can see massive catalysts for this year that I'm also looking at that are going to be very separate from this. And I think we could still see a lot of volatility, maybe trading up because of these events. So actually, I've got them written down here. The first one is a spot Bitcoin ETF. We've got these around the world. We're really looking for the States to do something, right? So I think this is a positive. If we have a spot ETF, it's a general positive because obviously we can have a lot more cash and assets flowing into the space. Generally, if a Bitcoin spot ETF is accepted, I think that's generally a positive sign. The next one is stablecoins, and I also think this is positive. I think this year we're going to get a lot of regulatory clarity over the crypto space, and I only see this as a long-term a good thing. We need regulation. Otherwise, it will always be a, you know, Wild West market. And if we truly want Bitcoin, crypto to become 10, 50 trillion in, you know, multiple years time, then it needs to be regulated. The Fed has already come out and said this. This is the Board of Governors of the Fed. They've come out and said, here's some areas that we need to regulate. The first one, or there's a few here, but really the one that I'm looking at is including stable coins. Now, Circle, maker of USDC, went before Congress, and basically it looks like they're going to be one of the chosen partners for stablecoins, which is a very good thing. And stablecoins for me are positive. Stablecoin regulation is positive for the price of Bitcoin because it just means that more money can flow in, and more money flowing in, you know, it's not going to just moon the price overnight, but it's generally a good thing and the right step. The next is ETH 2.0. I see this as a positive generally for the space in many different ways. I'm not going to get into that now because it's very, very complex. But ETH 2.0 generally, I think, is a very good thing for, you know, many other apps as well, and dApps and pretty much the space in general. So this could be a very big key time for us. And then rates and inflation. This is not good, right? So what we have to see is, where is inflation? What is the Fed going to do about that? Because despite all of these three things that I think may be coming in 2022 and will be very positive for the price of crypto, rates and inflation is really a massive cloud over absolutely everything. And as you've just seen, Bitcoin and therefore other cryptos will react most strongly to what the Fed is doing. So that's why I think cryptos are consolidating right now. I think there's just a huge amount of uncertainty about what inflation is and what the Fed will do about that. We can also see that volumes are really low. So if we come over to exchanges right here and we see the spot exchanges, we can actually see that volumes are just starting to pick up. And this is a good sign. You know, you need high volume to really show us where the price should be. You can see across the board on spot exchanges, we're just seeing volumes start to come back in. So this is a good sign. Obviously, people are coming back to trade after the Christmas break, you know, and across in DEXs and also derivatives as well. We're just seeing volumes just start up again after the break. So this is a very good thing. But they're really the things I'm keeping an eye on, the fundamentals, as you can see here, and really inflation as well. So if you do want to enter the crypto giveaway, go ahead and do that. I'll leave the link in the description. I'm giving away $10,000 thanks to Pionex. You can check out a tutorial that I made for them in the description as well. Also for crypto course members, got over 30 videos coming to the crypto course that will be free for you guys. If you want to check out my crypto course, that will be linked in the description. Got 30 videos planned and more that are coming very soon, free for existing users. Price goes up when they're added as well, but check all of that out in the description. I'm James with Money's EG. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.